Well, hello, folks. I don't really do this very often. It's not something I've really done to be going on camera much these days. For the last 5 years of doing this work, I haven't really talked on camera very much, and but today I felt like it was time to do so. The main reason I didn't do that was because that was kind of what I used to do as a job for many years. I did it First I started out on YouTube and did viral videos, did Dubstep Santa and Heavy Metal Farmer, and loads of different things on RudeTube. Then it got on RudeTube, then it got on Fox Television. I went to the Avatar premiere, and then I met someone from ITV there, and then I became a professional television presenter. That was my profession, as in I wasn't particularly professional at it, but that was my profession. For a couple of years I was in and out of doing TV stuff, and then on ITV in the UK that took me to Hollywood quite a number of times, and I interviewed different stars from television and movies, and that was my life for a while. Then with the money that I got from that, I started to get too cocky with myself. I fell away from the faith. I spent the money on drink and drugs being cannabis. I got into witchcraft a little bit, not heavily, but a little bit. And I just generally started to rebel because I'd already fallen away from church by that point, because this is another line of thought, is that mental health was not good. When I was 13 years old, I heard a implanted thought or voice in my head when I was sitting there in church one day, and it was blasphemous. It convinced me that I'd committed the unforgivable sin, and so as a result I fell away from church because I thought there's no hope for me left, and the only way in the end of it, the only way that I could stop the blasphemous thoughts was by not being in church. Now, some people would say that sounds demonic, which I personally believe that our brains are fallen, and I do believe that the devil does buffet us as believers, because I was a believer already since I was a child. But what started then, I believe, was a mental health problem, because it was part of a wider obsessive compulsive disorder that I had, where I would be ritualistically cleaning things to start with, and then I was organising different things parallel, touching door handles over and over again, switching light switches on and off, making things parallel in order to stop a family member's death in my mind. And then the obsessions and compulsions moved into my mind alone. That it was more like ruminations, that inside my head I was doing compulsions inside my head. So this OCD, which then later developed onto other mental health issues, started back then when I was in church, and just before that. But so I don't know whether to say that that's demonic or whether the devil used mental health in that case, but it took me away from church and sent me down a spiraling journey away from church and into some awful places, which, after being in the television and doing that on TV and taking drugs, getting into witchcraft and drinking too much, I then ended up in a mental health ward, and I lost the job on television. Interestingly enough, it seems like the Lord let me get to that point that I just had no hope left. I was just absolutely despairing, and it felt like I had to get to that point of rock bottom before I realised that Christ is the only rock at the bottom. Because when I was in the mental health ward, some people came in from a church and they told me about Jesus and reminded me about Jesus, and I told them basically what had happened, that I'd started getting into witchcraft, doing a Ouija boards, and even trying to contact demons, trying to contact the devil, looking into different rituals and black candles and different things like this. So I was starting to get to that point of danger, and it seems like that it got to that point that it went so far, because I still believe I was a Christian, because I became a Christian when I was young. I prayed to God very sincerely when I was about 7 years old, and it got to that stage where it's almost as if God said, enough's enough, you've gone too far. And he brought me right down into that mental health hospital. People came into there from a church, and they came in and I told them my story, and they said, look, Satan doesn't love you, Jesus loves you. And the light bulb went on. I mean, I knew that already deep down, but the light bulb went on, and it just clicked, and I thought, what on earth have I been doing? God help me. And I came out of there. I came out of the hospital. I escaped a relationship that I was in that was not healthy. For those of you who know my past, you know that was part of, I believed I was bisexual at the time. I don't want to go into that now, but so God helped me out of that. So I know there's people out there that struggle with the same as that, which is why I mention it, because I want you to know that there is hope. That's not the end of the line. If you're struggling with sexuality, that there is help, that anything's possible with God, and he certainly helped me out of that. So all of this kind of came to this point after I've been in hospital, and those church people spoke to me, that I came back out and I escaped all those things, and I really finally got to the point where I fell on my knees and I asked the Lord, please Lord, help me to see what the truth is. And he brought me on a journey of repentance and sanctification. Slowly but surely those things fell off piece by piece. It didn't all happen to start with. There's still things to this day that I've struggled with, but piece by piece those things have fallen off. Those sins, those habitual sins, those besetting sins that I was so stuck in and lost. And I had no idea how lost I was until the Lord brought me back. And now looking back, I can just say, wow, I was lost. I was lost. I thought I had to be something in this world. I thought that I had to strive to matter in this world, to be famous, to be someone who was a global influencer in some way. It's delusional now when I think back. But that's what I thought, that was the purpose of life, because I'd fallen away from my faith and I fell into atheism and witchcraft, and I mocked Christianity at that point. I do not deserve to come back. I do not deserve for God to bring me back, but he did. And that is just an amazing testimony that God still loved me enough to bring me back, even though I knew the truth and I'd fallen away, and God still pursued me. He still came looking for the lost sheep. And I praise and thank Jesus Christ for doing that, for not giving up. And we have to remember that not only does he save, but he keeps. He's the good shepherd that keeps his flock. And I'm an example of that he knows all my hidden sins. I'm completely naked and bare before him, and yet he still came after me, even though he knows even the musings of my mind, which is often not holy. And I just thank him that despite all of my sins and despite all of my problems and the way that I've messed up and rebelled throughout my life, that he still loved me enough. His grace was enough. In my weakness, he was strong. He came and he took me back and pursued his lost sheep, the prodigal son. It's just amazing. So that's my story. And yes, in Hollywood, to start with, when I started this channel, I wanted to keep it quiet. I didn't want that to taint what I was doing. That was probably the wrong decision, because in keeping that quiet, then people found out that I used to work in the media, and they automatically thought that I was some kind of shill because I was had a previous life in the media. But that's part of my testimony. That's what God saved me from. And yes, I did see things in the media that concerned me. And it did all make sense when I came onto YouTube and I saw that the end of the world, the New World Order. I saw Vigilant Christian 5 years ago. He was one of the first that kind of woke me up to that, hang on, this is biblical, what's going on. I wouldn't say I saw anything that I see on YouTube going on. I mean, some of the people were a bit strange. Very controlled, very they all have their own minders, these celebrities. And like, for example, I went to shake someone's hand and I got told off for shaking his hand. So they're very, I saw that kind of stuff going on, but and you know, doing weird symbols and things like that. I saw a bit of that, but nothing outrageous in terms of that. But yeah, so it just all made sense, and I couldn't believe that I was going into that world. So thank God for saving me from it. Anyway, I hope you've enjoyed the work. I hope you've enjoyed the videos on RSE. I hope to keep making them, maybe slightly different at the moment, talking a bit more on camera about some of the things that may help us in our Christian walk. I've decided to go more that route at the moment, to talk more about God, because I think it's important in this time to focus. I mean, look at what's going on in the world. It's crazy. Look at who would have imagined like 6 months ago that we would all be going around in masks outside and looking like the apocalypse, and that we can't even meet in churches to worship God. Who would have thought that would have been going on? But things are changing. I mean, we've just seen so much going on in the last few years and how it's all unfolding. And it's just, COVID-19. I think it's a real disease. I'm not going to go into it, but I think it's a real disease. And that's something that is going on. I think that it's grossly exaggerated. I think that there's issues with the figures, the numbers. I think that there's an agenda going on behind it that is very anti-Christ. But I do think that there is such a thing as coronavirus. And, I don't mind wearing a mask in a shop if that's that. But I certainly would not have the vaccination. But I'm not going to go into that because it gets very complicated. Some people say the vaccination is the mark of the beast. People talking, there's always this chatter about everything that goes on. But I try to stay out of the politics of stuff and just try and be wise and sensible and see what's going on. But yeah, it's interesting times to be alive and stay vigilant of everything that's going on. I hope you're all well, and I hope to continue to see you on here. And God bless. Thank you for listening. Take care.